Okay, quick comparison for overhead desktop video making of the Logitech Brio 4K capabilities versus the Razer Kiyo Pro Ultra 4K, which is what you're seeing this video on right now. I started this video 3 or 4 times. I realized that I was going far too far down the hole of like explaining like the terminology, and that if you're watching this video, you probably don't need me to explain like exactly why noise occurs in videos. Visual noise. I'm going to keep this fairly high level. If you want a really deep version of this video, please leave a comment and I'll post a much more in-depth, more photography or video 101 video to go with this. Okay, let's dive in. First of all, the Razer camera has much more ability to deal with a wide gamut of light levels, all without adjusting the camera settings. With the Brio, if I wanted to be able to see the inside of this little hole on this black multi-tool, I would have had to have had a setting. I would have had to have adjusted my settings to be able to see the different contrast and the different darkness levels in this without the blacks being crushed. But in that same video, there's no way I could have picked up, say, this USB hub and then looked at the text on here and had it readable. It would have all been washed out because it would have been too bright and white in the same video without me adjusting settings. So the Brio had less ability to deal with a very wide range of lights and darks in the same image. What I'm seeing here on the Razer is that I may be able to find a set of settings that works well enough for both bright and dark objects that I'm no longer having to tweak my my recording settings before I start recording. Very cool. Second item on the list, noise levels. The Razer has imperceivable noise right now. I am looking at my OBS recording and I've been looking at it on the screen. It is rock solid. I don't see any shimmer, any movement. This background isn't moving, nothing. It's just rock solid in 4K. On the Brio, I always had a ton of noise at 4K. It's one of the reasons why I've always uploaded my YouTube videos in 1080p. I've always downscaled them is because I wanted to remove that noise is to keep it from being a distraction in the video. In this, now with this new camera, I can probably record, process, and upload 4K without any worry about the noise being a distraction due to the image dancing and shimmering all the time. I've noticed that it looks like YouTube's post-processing also deals a little bit with noise. I don't know exactly what they do, but they seem to have some magic going on there too. Because I have uploaded a few videos with a little bit of noise that's visible, and it disappears by the time they recompress and save the video. And maybe that's just an artifact of them continuing to compress my video down. Next item on the list, depth of field for focus. This camera has a depth of field this camera is about 16 inches up right now from the desk, and it has a focus of about an inch or inch and a half. It is a very narrow window. The way I have it tuned right now is, even though you may not be able to see it in the YouTube video, the items sitting on the table are ever so slightly out of focus. The focus level I have it tuned to right now is right about here. It's a couple inches up, so that I can come in here and I can be like, oh, let's look at the serial number on this blade, and you'll be able to pick it up and read it from this point. Although the problem is if I come up even 2 more inches, it's starting to get pretty fuzzy. And if I go down all the way to the table, it's also slightly fuzzier. So it's a very, very, very narrow depth of field. I have not been able to find any settings like f-stop or anything else, even if virtual, to be able to adjust around that. So it might just be something you have to adjust to with this camera. For anyone who hasn't dealt with this before in normal photography, one of the solutions to this is just to move the camera up. But at a certain point, you have to start zooming the image and you start to lose resolution with like a digital camera or a webcam. So there are choices that have to be made here. But if you really need a wider depth of field so that you have more area that's in focus, or more depth of focus, what you can do is you could move the camera up and get that to be a little bit bigger, because as you move away, that natural area where you have focus is getting larger and larger. So it's not a problem for me. I think I'm going to be able to work with it because I'm mostly working in this area, and I can tune this thing so that I can always have the thing I want people focused on in my hand, ready at the right level. I just have to make sure that I tune it for where my hands naturally are as I'm talking about everyday carry gear or whatever I'm doing. Next item. Out of the box, the Razer's color levels are far better. They're very accurate to real life. I find that they don't undersaturate and they don't oversaturate. They seem to be about the right mix for a webcam, for a very, very high-end webcam that I would say is better than many of the digital cameras I've had. The real problem with that is that what is accurate isn't necessarily pleasing to the eye. And so I'm going to have to tweak with that, because on the Logitech, I had gotten to the point that I could make this background kind of an inky dark black that still had some texture. Whereas with the Razer, I don't think I'm going to be able to make this thing pitch black anymore. I'm going to need to accept that under this level of light in this room, in order to be able to get the colors and everything else right, that it's going to appear closer to its normal color, which is, intended to be black, but due to its reflectivity, it's, slightly brighter than a black. Maybe a very, very, very dark gray is how it appears. Next thing. Razer Synapse software versus the Logitech G-Hub software. 6 of one, half a dozen of another. Maybe I'll run into all sorts of problems with Synapse that make me not like it, but I already don't like G-Hub. I find that it creates these issues where I'm having to jump between apps, and sometimes I get locked out of the driver, and my settings are not maintained. I haven't ran into that problem with Synapse yet. And the other thing I have noticed is that the Synapse software allows you to save the settings to the camera, so that then you don't even need their software running. I have not tested it yet. I don't know how robust it is and whether or not it'll just maintain settings, even if I unplug the camera and take it somewhere else and plug it into a random new PC. But that's what the settings imply. And if that's true, that's great. I have shut the software, click their save button, shut the software completely down, fired up OBS, which is what I'm recording on, and then the settings are still there. So I believe that it's retaining those settings and saving them in some sort of NVRAM so that they're retained even if the software is not active. That is great compared to most webcams where you're always having to battle the software versus the application you're using in order to capture your stream. One more thing regarding color is that on the Logitech, I was able to get things very nice and very visually appealing. I think it's going to take time for me to get there. This camera is clearly just more capable, so it's going to require a little more effort. Next, the Mac, because of the depth of field for the focus being so shallow, what I've got is a situation where if I kick into macro mode, the focus, and I'll overlay a video right here that I've taken looking at the texture on a Balisong here, and you can see the grain very, very nicely. But the cool thing about this camera is that if I were uploading videos in 4K, you could see the grain all the way down here, because the camera has the ability to see, not only perceive, but record the color differences down here. Super duper neat. And not have it blown out. Whereas on the Brio, if I was looking at something like this where there is a very slight polishing, there's polishing marks that run along this handle, it would blow these out and you couldn't see the detail unless I tweaked the settings on the camera to specifically focus on this and capture that detail, but then it wouldn't work for others. The G-Hub software did allow me to save a bunch of profiles so that I could easily switch, but it would be great if I can just have a camera that just does it automatically and I don't ever have to change the settings as long as I maintain the correct height while using the camera. I think that covers most of what I've got here to talk about right now. Just a little more information on my setup. I have a little desk here. I have a 21-inch ring light about 3 feet up from me. That's what's providing the overhead light that we're using right now for this video. I have a microphone off to the side here, and then I have the Razer up on an arm mounted to the wall directly above this portion of the desk so that it's looking almost exactly straight down. There's my quick comparison. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'd be happy to make a longer version of this video or address very specific questions. For overhead video, I think this camera is going to work great. I was tempted to go with a SLR or with like a Micro Four Thirds or some other digital camera, but I'm glad I did pick this one up now, and I'm excited to see where I go, where I can take it from here as I tweak my workflow to accommodate this new camera. I'm going to take my old Brio and I'm going to make it my side cam. One more example for you, just since I think this might be the best way to see the depth of field with the camera about 16 inches up. If you can read this, and then you'll see that it comes ever so slightly into better focus, and then it's going to go out of focus. And now I'm about 6 inches from the camera. So you can see that there is clearly a sweet spot, and I can adjust where that sweet spot is all the way from about 6 inches all the way to the table. But the sweet spot is what the sweet spot is, and it's about 1.5 inches tall. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for viewing. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.